Barkley, a tier by himself. I honestly don't even think there's anything to talk about here. I mean, this is a running back that followed up on a 34-point performance against the Commanders with a 46-point bomb against the Rams. He's been running back 1 overall since week 3. He has just as many 30-plus point performances, almost as games with fewer than 20 points. He's the clear running back 1. He's the clear most valuable player in fantasy. What could have possibly made him the best fantasy football asset of all time is if you never had Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown vultures. If those were removed, you'd be looking at a truly historic season for Barkley. Going down to tier 2, all of these running backs are very exciting. We're going to have McCaffrey, Achane, Kamara, Bijan, and Henry Mixon. Now, to be completely honest with you, I would not fault you if you wanted to rearrange this order in whatever way you want. That's why we do this as tier list. Now, speaking on McCaffrey, obviously this is a running back that really disappoints in week 12, but we've already had word from the Niners that Brock Purdy should be good to go in week 13. Expectations will be dramatically raised across the board for this offense. Looking at Devon Achane, this is a running back that yet again comes through and shows you he's going to get usage at the goal line. I mean, back-to-back weeks, sportsbooks have projected Miami to be a top 5 offense in total points scored. Looks like Miami is back. Achane has all the goal line usage. You don't have to worry about Mostert, and obviously Achane has the usage as a receiver. Looking at Alvin Kamara, I mean, this is a running back that's the RB3 currently in total fantasy points. If you're looking at the targets per game that you have from Kamara, he is averaging 7-8 targets a game, averaging about 40 to 50 receiving yards per game. I mean, this is what you'd look for a wide receiver 3, plus you get the rushing. And then going over to Bijan Robinson with Bijan, I mean, you also have absolutely a massive role as a receiver. Maybe the benefit that you'd give to Bijan is obviously the schedule, plus the fact that you don't have to deal with Taysom Hill. And then going over to Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon. Yes, I understand that Derrick Henry has been much better than all the other running backs in this tier so far this season. I wouldn't be surprised if that continues to be the case going into the future. Derrick Henry has never had a game this season where he's scored fewer than 10 fantasy points. Derrick Henry's never had a game this year where he has not scored a touchdown. Yes, you heard that correctly. Derrick Henry has scored a touchdown every single game this season. If you wanted to go through and take Derrick Henry to have a touchdown in the game tonight, you can do so over on Underdog Fantasy. And if you go through the link in the description or comment section, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you'll be getting a free Justin Herbert pick, more than less than half a total yard for tonight's game. And you're going to be getting a free team review in the live stream we're doing every single night. But beyond that, the only hesitation I have with ranking Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon down here at 6 and 7 at the bottom of this tier, where they're still incredibly close to everybody else in it, is they both still have to deal with the week 14 bye, which I'm sorry, but this is going to make a difference because if we go through and look at the amount of games that you have left this season, you have weeks 13, 14, and then the fantasy football playoffs. Then maybe you make it to week 15. Maybe you make it to week 16. And if you're very lucky, you make it to week 17. So at the very minimum, you're getting 20% fewer games from Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, and possibly upwards of 40% fewer games from these two running backs in comparison to the other players that have already gone through their bye weeks. Now, going over to the next tier, we are going to be led off with Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs would definitely move higher in this list if the David Montgomery injury turns out to be serious. But from what I can tell, sounds like Montgomery is going to be good to go for Thursday, or at least that's what is being reported coming out of Detroit. With Gibbs, yes, Montgomery's had a considerable amount of touchdowns so far this season. And yeah, Gibbs has actually seen the receiving volume be lower than what I was expecting this year. I love Gibbs this year based off sportsbooks projecting out the Lions to be an elite offense. Also, based off the fact that I thought that this was going to be a running back with a massive role as a receiver. The receiving role isn't exactly there, but it just frankly doesn't matter because this is by far and away the best offense in the league. So even if Montgomery's taking rushing touchdowns, you still have a massive, massive share of those going in the direction of Gibbs. I mean, he's the running back 6 so far this season in total fantasy points scored already through the bye week as well. I saw a recent comment on the last video, or the video last night right after the Rams game, of someone asking if Kyren Williams is the biggest bust this season. What the hell are you smoking? Kyren Williams is a running back that continues to see every single snap for the Los Angeles Rams. Over the past 2 weeks, yes, it's been disappointing. The receiving usage for Kyren Williams has really taken a turn for the worst. But I mean, still you are getting at the very minimum, 15 touches in every single game. That's the worst game you've had so far this season, is 15 touches from Kyren Williams. Now, obviously, over the past month, he's been much worse than he was at the beginning of the season, but you're still seeing every single snap played. I mean, this was a tough matchup going up against Philly. What you really need to see for Kyren to potentially get back up into that tier 2 is you need to see the receiving usage. Breece Hall has that receiving volume. The reason I'm going to be potentially ranking Breece Hall a little bit under where most people are expecting, especially with him being the running back 5 so far this season in total points scored, plus the fact that you're looking at him with a pretty good schedule in the year, is the reports that we have coming out of New York referencing the fact that you may actually not have Aaron Rodgers for the second half of this season for the Jets. And if that were to be the case, I just naturally think that you have to lower expectations for all players in this Jets offense, because even if Rodgers has been very bad this season, you're looking at an offense that would be much, much worse without him. And then looking at Josh Jacobs, y'all know I absolutely love this dude. Could not stop drafting him this offseason. Stood by him earlier in the year when he was disappointing. But I mean, as of late, he has been on fire. Over the past 5 games, you've had 20 points in at least 4 of them. The reason we've stood by Josh Jacobs for this long as an RB1 is, frankly, he is a 3-down running back in one of the best offenses in the league. You get the hat trick, you get the 3 rushing touchdowns against the Niners here. Now, of course, you don't see anything as a receiver, so maybe you don't get the Saquon Barkley level performance right. But frankly, it doesn't matter. You have touchdown upside any given week in this Packers offense. And we have seen Jacobs really average about 3 targets per game this season. So it's not like he's a 0 as a pass catcher. Now, going down to our next tier, Chase Brown, you could very easily make an argument to have higher than this. Obviously, Chase Brown through the bye week. And if you're looking at what we have seen over the past 3 weeks with no Zach Moss, every single week he's had over 80% of the snaps. I mean, he's averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. I mean, this is a running back that's also sitting there averaging about 7 targets a game as well. So if you told me going into the future that Chase Brown's going to see 80+% of the snaps guaranteed in this Cincinnati Bengals offense, based off how good this offense is, I would not have Chase Brown ranked in the tier above alongside Josh Jacobs. I would have Chase Brown ranked up in the tier with McCaffrey. Now, the issue is I don't necessarily know if coming out of the bye week, we're guaranteed to see that 80% snap rate for Chase Brown. I think that there's a small possibility that this turns into a little bit more of a running back by committee, just because we haven't really seen this over a large sample here. But I think that you still have to be very excited, and I really want to rank him as a running back 1 until you see that workload go down. And then going over to Kenneth Walker, even in the day where you get the poor rushing performance, where you only have 2.5 yards per carry, when you don't have a touchdown, you still get the 13 fantasy points. And this is what's so important about having that receiving workload, where he gets the 6 targets, 4 receptions, 52 receiving yards. So even in a tough spot against the Cardinals, he still has a fine day. This is still a running back that is going out there and giving you about 15 total rushing attempts a game, while at the same time you're getting about 5 targets a game. So you're averaging 20 opportunities a game in a decent offense. And this is obviously a running back that has the upside for a long play in a given week. Going over to James Cook, still very excited about James Cook. Another running back that's through his bye week, a running back that has the red zone role in one of the best offenses in the league. Now, obviously, you look at the Chiefs game and you see, oh, okay, well, you only played 37. Honestly, that doesn't frankly matter. I mean, the snap rate for James Cook's not really going to be relevant. We're all season, he's only played about 50% of the snaps in Buffalo. But the thing is, he's getting all the high value opportunities in this Buffalo offense. And you can say the same thing with David Montgomery here, where the snap rate really isn't super important. You've actually only had 2 games this season where David Montgomery's played at least 50% of the snaps here in Detroit. But this is the best offense in the league. Montgomery's averaged a touchdown per game so far this season. Now, obviously, I'm making this ranking under the assumption that David Montgomery is good to go, and you don't have really any, hesitation on him missing week 13. If you think Montgomery's going to miss week 13, obviously you have to lower expectations. Then we are going to be having Jonathan Taylor. With Taylor, I'm sorry. I know a lot of people asked if they should have benched him this past week against the Lions. Obviously, you knew to lower expectations given how bad the matchup was, given the fact that you have Anthony Richardson at quarterback, who may vulture rushing touchdowns, who will have a lower checkdown rate as well. I still thought, had to go through and play Jonathan Taylor just because he is one of the very few running backs. I mean, really the only running back in the NFL that will have 100% of the snaps in his backfield and will have 100% of the touches. There's not a single other player that's going to get work here. But you do need to maybe be a little bit hesitant again for the reasons we just mentioned, where you do have a lower checkdown rate from Anthony Richardson. The targets won't exactly be there, while at the same time, you are going to have Anthony Richardson stealing rushing touchdowns, and it's not a great offense. So you do see him just absolutely faceplant in back-to-back weeks with fewer than 10 fantasy points. But again, you're seeing 100% of the opportunities. I still stand by. I think Jonathan Taylor is a pretty talented back. I'm going over to what we have with Isaiah Pacheco. I am making this ranking, honestly, operating under the assumption that Isaiah Pacheco is going to go week 13. Obviously, he starts practicing back in week 11. Didn't expect him to play against Buffalo. I actually did think that we are going to get him going against Carolina, given the practice reports. But I think it's a safe assumption. You get Pacheco coming in week 13. Clearly, the Chiefs kind of need Isaiah Pacheco at this point. And the one hesitation I will have here is the Chiefs do have a pretty bad playoff schedule when it comes to the opponents that Pacheco should be going up against. Now, Aaron Jones will be our next back. With Aaron Jones, really perfect spot against Chicago. You can see the 26 opportunities and go, oh my gosh, that's great. I guess he is a 3-down back. But honestly, the total number of opportunities may be a little bit skewed because this game goes to overtime. But if you look at this in comparison to what you have with Cam Akers, literally an afterthought. It seems like the usage dip that you had in weeks 10 and 11 really was due to the injury that you had from Aaron Jones back in week 10. Doesn't seem to be something that you're having to concern yourself with going into the future. Decent offense, not great offense, a running back that will have a role as a receiver. And then going over to Chuba Hubbard here at 19. I know maybe it seems like Hubbard is still too low in the ranks. And I want to be completely honest, I thought Hubbard wasn't going to have a great day against KC. I thought it was a really tough matchup. I thought Brooks may take some of the receiving downs. And Jonathan Brooks has zero, literally nada, zip, plays like 2 or 3 snaps. You have everything for Chuba Hubbard here going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. He drops 15 points. You get the rushing touchdown. And this was a really tough matchup against this Chiefs rush defense. And it also looks like you have some life for the Carolina Panthers offense as well. So where previously we were worried about Brooks coming in, turning this into a running back by committee in one of the league's worst offenses. Maybe the offense is a little bit better than we gave it credit for, while at the same time, and maybe Brooks' role is just not going to expand at any point this season. Now going down to our next tier, I hate to admit it, but if you look at my team right now, my best running back is James Conner. And freaking, this is a disaster. This is slowly turning into a 3-man running back by committee, where we blamed it previously against the Bears and the Jets, where you see about 50% of the snaps played here for James Conner. I blamed it on the fact that the games were blowouts. I don't know how long we can keep on just going, no, game environment. You get 7 carries for 8 rushing yards for James Conner. Now, obviously, he comes through, kind of saves the day as a receiver. I mean, you get about 10 fantasy points. Not great. The benefit that you have with James Conner is he has the best fantasy football playoff schedule of any running back that you're going to find. So that's the benefit. But you do have very real concerns. Also, you can't have Kyler vulturing rushing touchdowns, of course. Going over to J.K. Dobbins, we'll see what he does in the game tonight. Obviously, I will live stream after the game and update the rankings if need be. But we do have J.K. Dobbins currently on Underdog for tonight's game at higher lower 66.5 total yards. You'd have to be concerned that the games that you're about to see from Los Angeles, you probably actually have to have a considerable more dropbacks than what they were doing at the beginning of the season. DeAndre Swift, sadly, is my second best running back. I'm not going to lie to you. It's gross. With Swift, he's seeing the vast majority of the opportunities in the backfields. He's just getting cucked by Roschon Johnson. Or Roschon Johnson's coming through, and Roschon has usage on third downs. Roschon's really the only back that gets utilized on third downs. And Roschon is getting some involvement at the goal line. So you absolutely hate to see it. Could not be worse. I guess it could be worse. I guess Roschon could take over as a starting back, which isn't happening at this point, thank God. But I'm very much concerned about DeAndre Swift, and the schedule is just freaking brutal. And then going over to Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson a little bit banged up. Obviously, we're going to have to wait to make sure that he is 100% good to go this week. But also, no matter what, you do have him missing week 14 with the bye week. So especially if Brian Robinson misses week 13 and then week 14, you may not have Brian Robinson back until the fantasy football playoffs, depending on the extent of this injury. Then going over to what we have with Tony Pollard. I'm expecting that probably Spears makes it back this week. If Spears were to miss any more time, I think that you could go ahead and you probably could move Pollard up, because we have seen with a large sample that Tony Pollard is going to have 80% of the snaps, or 80+% of the snaps here in this Titans offense in any games that Spears misses. But again, the second that you get Tyjae Spears back in, obviously you would need to lower expectations just a bit. I'm going over to Tyrone Tracy. Tracy, you actually get the most receiving usage that you've had since back in week 6. It's a game where they just get absolutely blown out. Tracy still should be viewed as the clear starting running back for the Giants. A little bit frustrating that you do have some Devin Singletary usage, but of course, at the same time, you can say, well, the game was a blowout. The usage of the running backs isn't going to be super predictive of what's to happen going into the future. But best case scenario, you're a running back with not a massive receiving role in one of the league's worst offenses. So, I mean, this is what we've said literally every single week, or since you had the blow up against Pittsburgh in week 8, where I really hope you sold high then. And then going over to Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving, you have to rank as the running back 1 in Tampa. You get these 6 targets out of the backfields. You have more opportunities than Rachaad White for pretty much like the first time all season. And at the same time, if you are looking at what we have seen with Bucky Irving, he's been more efficient than Rachaad White all year. Now, also, one thing I do want to point out in terms of a negative potential here is you do have 4 rushing touchdowns. 4 rushing touchdowns for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, of course, Bucky Irving is going to look viable. Of course, we want to maybe sit here and initial gut reaction would be to move Bucky Irving way higher than this. But you're probably not going to get those 4 rushing touchdowns every single week going into the future. Ramondre Stevenson, the 3rd best running back I have on my team. I hate this dude. I don't know why. But when he flops, nothing makes me more mad. He's been so inefficient this season. You have 2 games this season where he's had 4 or more yards per carry. 2 games. I mean, literally looking at his yards per target, you're looking at 2 games this season where he's had more than 4 yards per target. Super inefficient, super low floor. Every time he does this, I go, I'm never starting this dude again. Then he'll go out there and drop 18 fantasy points. I go, okay, maybe I can throw him in my second flex spot. And then we just turned out to be bamboozled all over again. Going over to Rachaad White. With White, he gets there with the touchdown this past week. But yet again, Rachaad White continues to be less efficient than Bucky Irving. You'd expect the rookie to probably continue to expand his role as time goes on. And Sean Tucker does take a rushing touchdown. So if it's a 50-50 backfield split where you really only had to worry about the combo of Bucky Irving and Rachaad White taking from each other, then maybe you're not that concerned. But as you go through and as you throw in another running back that may have a rushing touchdown, it is frustrating in general. Now, going over to what we have with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb comes through in a big-time way on Thursday nights. But in reality, going into the future, Nick Chubb's still a touchdown or bust running back in a bad offense. No receiving usage whatsoever. Nick Chubb has played a total of 5 games now this season, and the man is sitting with a total of 7 receiving yards. So you're averaging about 1.2 receiving yards per game. Now, I will say, I have a bunch of Nick Chubb in underdog drafts, so I really hope I'm wrong here. I really hope that Nick Chubb actually continues to expand his role and Nick Chubb continues to improve. That would be the hope. Now going over to Najee Harris. With Najee, I freaking started this dude this week as well. Shout out Thomas. Played Jalen Warren and he got more points. RIP. But anyway, Jalen Warren is eating into the Najee workload. Jalen Warren is going to have receiving usage. Najee has an absolute brutal schedule. And I don't know. He's a committee back with not a massive role as a receiver. Going over to Rico Dowdle. Again, Dowdle's always somebody that you can look to play if need be. But since you've had the Dak Prescott injury, you've seen 8, 5, and 10 points for Rico Dowdle. The role's very safe, where obviously he's going to be the guy with the 3-down workload here. But also at the same time, it is still a very bad offense, despite them having one strong game with Cooper Rush. And then we will have Travis Etienne. Obviously, we're going to be putting out the rest of season wide receiver ranks soon as well. And you will see what we are doing specifically with Bryant Thomas Jr. And I'm going to be ranking these Jags guys as if this is a bottom 5 offense in the league until we see otherwise. Once you potentially get word, oh no, Trevor Lawrence is coming back. Trevor Lawrence will be good to go. Then at that point, sure, we'll pivot over. At that point, sure, we'll go ahead and we'll actually get, I don't know, Travis Etienne to the top of this tier. But Etienne's just been a straight up bum all season. The last time he had 10 fantasy points was week 5. And then going down to our last tier, I maybe am a little bit afraid that Javonte could have lost his job. With Javonte, you get the 8 rushing attempts for -2 rushing yards. Kind of split in the backfield 3 ways. Obviously, Bo Nix looks good. Looks like it's a decent offense. Warren, premium handcuff back. Brooks, premium handcuff back. Eckler, premium handcuff back. Hunt, premium handcuff back. Charbonnet, handcuff back. Tyler Algier. All these running backs are like desperation plays. If you really need to go with them, you can. But more so, you're just looking at them as options that would be exciting if the guy in front of them were to go down. But I think that's all I got for you. Again, I want to reiterate, if y'all want to say, Mason, Derrick Henry's way too low in this. Derrick Henry scored a touchdown every single game this year. You can go take Derrick Henry to have a touchdown in the game tonight on Underdog Fantasy. You can find that link in the description, in the comment section. Code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you're going to be getting a free Justin Herbert pick, more than less than half total yard for the game tonight. And you'll be getting a free team review that we're doing the live stream every night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way we're able to go ahead and credit you with that free team review. But I think that's all I got for you. Really appreciate you and really hope we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.